You sit down to work. You have the coffee. You have the time. You have the goal. But as soon as you look at the screen, a heavy gray curtain falls over your mind. You read the same sentence 3 times and absorb nothing. You walk into a room and forget why you are there. You feel like you are wading through molasses. You blame your diet. You blame your sleep. You assume you are just lazy or broken. But what if I told you that your brain is doing this on purpose? We tend to think of brain fog as a malfunction. But in psychology, there is a strong argument that brain fog is actually a highly functional defense mechanism. Think of it like a squid releasing ink. When a squid feels threatened, it blasts the water with black ink to blind the predator and escape. Your subconscious mind does the exact same thing. When you are getting too close to a truth that is painful, a marriage that is over, a job you hate, or a trauma you haven't processed, your brain pulls the emergency brake. It floods your system with fog to numb you out. It prefers you to be confused and stagnant, because clarity would require you to make a scary change. The fog is not stopping you from thinking. It is stopping you from feeling. Today, we are going to stop treating the symptoms. We are going to stop buying more vitamins. We are going to ask the one question that dissolves the ink. What is the specific truth that my brain is terrified to acknowledge? Chapter 1. The Sentry at the Gate. Imagine a fortress deep within your own mind. It is a vast, complex structure built to house your consciousness, your memories, and your identity. At the very entrance of this fortress stands a guard, a solitary figure whose only job is to control what gets in, and more importantly, what gets out. This is the sentry at the gate. Most of us view brain fog as a broken window in this fortress. We see it as a malfunction. We assume something has gone wrong with the wiring or the chemistry. We blame our diet, or our sleep schedule, or the weather. We treat the fog like an intruder that has snuck in to steal our clarity. But this perspective ignores a fundamental truth about human psychology. The mind is designed to survive. It is an engine of self-preservation. Often, the symptoms we hate the most are actually strategies the mind is using to protect us. The fog is not an intruder. The fog is a weapon deployed by the sentry. Consider the nature of physical pain. If you touch a hot stove, your hand pulls back before you consciously realize you are burned. Your body prioritizes safety over your desire to touch the stove. The psychological system works in a very similar way. When an emotional truth becomes too hot to handle, the sentry steps in. It sees the realization coming up from the depths of your subconscious. It sees the anger you feel toward a spouse, or the crushing disappointment of your career, or the grief you have never processed. The sentry evaluates this incoming data. It calculates the risk. It decides that if you were to fully feel that pain right now, it would destroy you. It determines that the truth is a threat to your stability, so it pulls the emergency lever. It floods the system with smoke. It numbs the connection between your emotions and your intellect. This is the mechanism of dissociation. It is a freeze response. In the wild, an animal freezes to avoid being seen by a predator. In the modern world, the predator is often internal. The predator is the reality of your own life. To keep you safe from the sharp, jagged edges of that reality, the sentry wraps your mind in cotton wool. You sit down to work and your mind goes blank. You try to engage in conversation and you feel distant, as if you are watching yourself from across the room. You lose your keys. You forget names. You feel like you are wading through molasses. You become frustrated with yourself. You wonder why you cannot just focus. But the sentry does not care about your productivity. It does not care about your to-do list or your social standing. It only cares about your survival.
It knows that if the fog lifts, you will have to look the monster in the eye. You will have to acknowledge that you hate your job. You will have to admit that you are lonely. You will have to face the fact that you have abandoned your potential. Those truths demand action. They demand that you change your life. And change is terrifying. Change is dangerous. So the sentry keeps the gate closed. It keeps you sedated. It prefers a dull, safe misery over the chaos of a painful awakening. The tragedy of this defense mechanism is that the sentry is not precise. It is a blunt instrument. It cannot selectively numb pain while leaving your joy and creativity intact. When it shuts the gate, it shuts it on everything. Your passion, your wit, your drive, and your ability to connect with others are all locked out, along with the trauma. You are safe from the pain, but you are also cut off from the vitality of being alive.
This is the psychosomatic bind. The body and the mind conspire to keep you in a state of low power mode. You are not broken. You are hiding. The fatigue you feel is the energy required to hold that heavy gate shut against the pressure of the truth. To dissipate the fog, you do not need more caffeine. You do not need a new productivity app. You need to negotiate with the sentry. You need to approach the gate and signal that you are finally ready to see what is on the other side. You must be willing to endure the initial sting of reality. Only when the sentry believes you can handle the truth will it lower its weapon and let the smoke clear.
If you enjoy these deep dives into the mechanics of the human mind and want to continue exploring the hidden architecture of your psychology, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We will see you in the next chapter.
Chapter 2. The roar you cannot hear. We often describe brain fog as a void. We call it emptiness or a blank space where our thoughts used to be. We treat it like a battery that has run out of charge or a connection that has simply dropped. But this is a misunderstanding of what is happening inside your skull. The silence you experience is not empty. It is heavy. It is dense. It is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of a mute button held down with desperate force. Consider for a moment how active noise cancellation works in the physical world.
If you want to create silence in a noisy room, you cannot simply delete the sound waves. Physics does not allow that. Instead, you must generate a new sound wave that is the exact inverse of the incoming noise. You have to push back against the pressure with equal and opposite pressure. The result is a flat line that sounds like silence, but is actually a state of high-tension conflict. Two forces are colliding and neutralizing each other perfectly. That is your brain fog. It is not a passive state of low energy. It is an active state of high-energy conflict. You are exhausted not because your system is failing, but because it is working overtime. It is spending nearly all its available resources to maintain the static. The question you must ask is not why you are tired. The question is, what sound is so deafening that your brain has decided to burn all your energy just to drown it out? We call this the roar. The roar is the truth you are not ready to handle. It is the scream of your intuition. It is the accumulation of every repressed emotion and every denied reality that you have pushed into the dark corners of your psyche. The roar is the realization that your marriage has been over for years. The roar is the knowledge that your career is slowly killing your spirit. The roar is the memory of a trauma you have never processed, or the sudden, sharp clarity that you are living a life that belongs to someone else. If the fog were to lift instantly, The roar would hit you with the force of a physical blow. You would feel the full weight of your rage. You would drown in the depth of your grief. You would be paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the terror associated with changing your life. Your brain knows this. Your nervous system is designed for survival, and it has calculated that clarity is currently a threat to your existence. So the sentry at the gate pulls the lever. It floods the engine with cotton wool. It slows your processing speed down to a crawl. It disconnects your ability to focus, because focusing means looking, and looking means seeing the thing you are desperate to ignore. The fog is a mercy. It is a blanket thrown over a fire. It keeps you safe from the flames of your own reality. This is why the standard advice often fails. You try to drink more water. You try to sleep more hours. You take supplements to sharpen your focus. But your brain fights you every step of the way. You are trying to turn the lights on, while a part of you is frantically smashing the bulbs. You are fighting your own defense mechanism. As long as the truth remains too dangerous to face, the fog will remain necessary to survive. You might feel that you are unable to think. That is not quite right. You are able to think, but you are not allowed to think. There is a rigid embargo on introspection. Every time your mind wanders too close to the source of the pain, the fog thickens. You find yourself scrolling through your phone for hours, not because you are interested in the content, but because the distraction keeps the silence from breaking. You stare at a wall. You forget what you were saying mid-sentence. These are not glitches. These are diversions. It is a psychosomatic stalemate. Your body holds the score that your mind refuses to read. The fatigue you feel in your limbs is the physical manifestation of the effort required to keep the door shut. Think of it like holding a beach ball underwater. At first, it takes only a little effort, but to hold it there for days or months or years requires a constant exertion of muscular force. You can never relax. You can never let go. If you do, the ball shoots up and breaks the surface. This is the roar you cannot hear because you have spent your entire life ensuring you do not hear it. You have become an expert at numbness because the alternative feels like annihilation. You have chosen the safety of the cage over the danger of the wild. The fog is not your enemy. The fog is your shield. But the cost of this shield is your vitality. To numb the pain, you have had to numb everything else. You cannot selectively mute the roar. When you dampen the noise of your suffering, you also dampen the noise of your joy and your ambition and your drive. You get silence, but it is the silence of a graveyard. Now we must look at what happens when you decide to stop holding the ball underwater. We must understand that the fog will only disperse when the safety it provides is no longer needed. The roar must be heard, but it does not have to destroy you. Chapter 3. The Somatic Brakes. Imagine you are sitting in the driver's seat of a high-performance vehicle. The engine is humming with potential. You have a destination in mind and a clear desire to get there. You press your foot down on the accelerator. You expect to surge forward. You expect the landscape to blur as you pick up speed. But instead of momentum, you get noise. The engine roars. The chassis vibrates violently. The tachometer climbs into the red zone. Yet you are barely crawling forward. The smell of burning rubber begins to fill the cabin. You are pushing with everything you have, but an unseen force is holding you in place. This is not a failure of the engine. There is nothing wrong with your fuel supply. The problem is that while one foot is slamming on the gas, your other foot is locked firmly on the brake. This is the somatic reality of brain fog. We often mistake this mental haze for a lack of energy. We treat it like a battery that has run dry. You drink more coffee. You take cold showers. You try to force your mind into gear through sheer willpower. But if we look at this through the lens of somatic psychology, we see that it is rarely a lack of power. It is almost always a conflict of forces. Think about the physics of that car. To keep a vehicle stationary while the engine is revving requires an immense amount of opposing force. The brakes must clamp down harder than the wheels can spin. This generates heat. This generates friction. This wears down the entire system. When you live with chronic brain fog, you are not running on empty. You are burning massive amounts of energy just to stay still. Your body is doing this to you on purpose. This is the mechanism of the somatic brake. Remember the sentry we spoke of earlier, the part of you that guards the gate against painful emotions. That sentry has direct access to your vehicle controls. It sees the cliff edge approaching. That cliff is the painful truth you are hiding from. It might be the realization that your career is unfulfilling, or that your relationship has turned toxic, or that a childhood wound is still bleeding. To your conscious mind, the road looks clear, but the body knows better. The body remembers the map. So before you can drive off that cliff, the body pulls the emergency brake. This explains the specific texture of the fog you feel. It is not just sleepiness, it is a heaviness, a distinct pressure behind the eyes, a feeling that your limbs are made of lead. That is the physical weight of resistance. Every time you try to formulate a clear thought that might lead you too close to the danger zone, the somatic brakes engage. Your neurology floods with inhibitory signals. It literally slows down the firing rate of your neurons. It feels like wading through deep water because chemically and electrically, your nervous system is creating drag. You interpret this as a malfunction. You think you are broken. You go to the doctor and ask why you cannot concentrate. You ask why you have no motivation. But in the logic of your nervous system, everything is working perfectly. The system is designed to prioritize survival over performance. If your internal threat detection system believes that clarity will destroy you, then it will enforce confusion. It will trade your intelligence for your safety. The tragedy is the energy cost. You spend your days exhausted, not because you did too much, but because you spent 8 hours fighting your own internal resistance. You are fighting the brakes. You are burning fuel just to stay still. The exhaustion of brain fog is the exhaustion of isometric tension. You are pushing against a wall that will not move. This is why rest often fails to cure brain fog. You can sleep for 10 hours and wake up tired because the conflict does not stop when you are unconscious. The tension is held in the fascia and the muscles and the nervous system itself. As long as the gas and the brake are pressed simultaneously, the system remains under extreme stress. To release the brakes, you cannot just press harder on the gas. That only burns out the engine. You have to find the lever. You have to look down and see what is holding you back. You have to understand that the friction is there for a reason. It is waiting for you to acknowledge the cliff so that you can steer away from it, rather than simply stopping the car. Until you look at the terrain, your body will not let you drive. The fog is not stopping you from living. It is stopping you from crashing. Chapter 4. The Terror of Clarity. We often speak of clarity as if it were a pure and unalloyed good. We imagine it as a warm sunrise that burns away the morning mist and leaves the world bright and navigable. We tell ourselves that if we could just think clearly, if we could just banish this persistent haze, we would finally be happy and effective. We buy supplements and practice sleep hygiene and force ourselves into cold showers because we believe that the fog is the enemy. We treat it like an intruder that has broken into our minds. But there is a darker possibility that we must consider. What if the fog is not an intruder? What if the fog is a shield?
This brings us to the most difficult realization in our journey through psychosomatic defense mechanisms. We must confront the terror of clarity. Imagine for a moment that the fog lifted right now. Imagine that the chemical screen in your brain was wiped clean instantly. You are suddenly capable of high-definition processing. You can see your life with absolute precision. This sounds desirable until you realize what that high definition reveals. Clarity is not always a soft light. Often, it is a forensic floodlight. It illuminates the cracks in the foundation of your house that you have been ignoring for a decade. It shines a harsh beam on the piles of unpaid emotional debts in the corner of the room. When you are in the fog, you have a very specific kind of protection. You have the protection of plausible deniability. You can tell yourself that you are confused. You can say that you do not know what to do about your failing marriage, or your soul-crushing career, or your buried trauma, because your brain just won't work properly. The fog provides a buffer. It blurs the sharp edges of your reality, so they do not cut you. If that buffer vanishes, you are left with the naked truth. You might have to admit that you are in a relationship that has been dead for years, and that you are staying only out of fear. You might have to admit that you have wasted years on a path you never wanted to walk. You might have to look at a painful memory that you have successfully repressed by keeping your consciousness dimmed. This is the terror of clarity. To see the truth is to be burdened with the responsibility of the truth. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you know that the tiger is in the room, you must either fight it or run from it. Both fighting and running require massive amounts of energy. They require courage and upheaval and risk. Your nervous system is an energy-conserving machine. It assesses the situation and decides that you do not have the resources to fight the tiger right now. It decides that facing the reality of your life would cause a catastrophic spike in cortisol and panic. So it chooses the third option. It blinds you. It turns down the dimmer switch on your cognition. If you cannot see the tiger, then you do not have to fight it. You can sit on the couch in a numb stupor and stare at the wall. You are not happy, but you are safe. You are in a state of suspended animation where the intolerable becomes tolerable because you are too sedated to feel the full weight of it. This is why standard treatments for brain fog often fail so miserably. You are trying to caffeine your way out of a defense mechanism. You are trying to use stimulants to override a security system that believes it is saving your life. When you try to force clarity without addressing the underlying fear, your brain fights back. It creates more fog. It adds fatigue and headaches to the mix. It pulls the somatic brakes harder because it perceives your desire for clarity as a threat to your stability. The brain is terrified of what you might do if you were fully awake. It fears that if you saw the mess of your life clearly, you might implode with grief or explode with rage. The fog is a form of repression. It is a heavy velvet curtain drawn across a window that looks out onto a scene of devastation. You are standing inside the room, pulling at the curtain, trying to let the light in, and your subconscious is standing on the other side, holding it shut with all its might. We have to stop looking at brain fog as a biological error. It is a biological success. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do.
It is numbing you to a reality that your nervous system has deemed too expensive to process. The terror of clarity is the fear of having to change your life. It is the fear of the unknown that waits for you on the other side of the decision you are refusing to make. As long as you are foggy, you remain passive. You can drift. You are a passenger in your own existence. Clarity demands that you take the wheel, and that is a terrifying prospect when you feel weak. We must respect the fog before we can ask it to leave. We must understand that it is not trying to hurt us. It is trying to keep us in the cage where it is safe and warm and dull. The question then shifts. It is no longer about how to fix your brain. The question becomes, what are you hiding from? What is the truth that is so painful that your own mind would rather blind you than let you see it? Until we are brave enough to answer that question, the sentry will remain at the gate, and the fog will remain the only weather we know. Chapter 5. Numbing the good to numb the bad. There is a devastating fine print in the contract you signed with your own survival instincts. When the sentry at the gate slammed shut the iron doors to keep out the terror, it did not just lock out the monsters. It locked out the sunlight. This brings us to the most tragic aspect of chronic brain fog as a defense mechanism. The physiological reality is that your nervous system does not possess a precision laser to excise only painful emotions. It is a blunt instrument. It operates less like a surgeon and more like a demolition crew. To understand why you feel this pervasive flatness, this gray washout of your daily experience, you must understand the mechanics of emotional suppression. You attempted to turn down the volume on the grief, the rage, or the fear that was threatening to overwhelm you. You reached for the dial in the panic room of your mind, and you twisted it all the way to the left. But human consciousness does not have separate volume knobs for misery and joy. It has a single master fader. When you dampen the noise of your trauma, you inadvertently silence the music of your life. This is the state of numbing the good to numb the bad. It is the collateral damage of your own safety. Consider the sensation of physical anesthesia. When a doctor numbs your arm to stitch a wound, you do not just lose the ability to feel the needle. You lose the ability to feel a lover's touch. You lose the ability to feel the warmth of the sun on your skin or the texture of silk. The nerve endings are offline. They cannot discriminate between an attack and a caress. Brain fog is simply this concept writ large across your entire psyche. You might have noticed that along with your confusion and your memory lapses, there is a distinct lack of vibrancy in your world. Perhaps food does not taste as rich as it used to. Perhaps the achievements that should make you proud feel distant, as if they happened to someone else. You might look at your family and know intellectually that you love them, yet feel a strange, glassy wall separating your heart from theirs. You are safe behind that wall. The pain cannot reach you there, but neither can the love. This explains why so many people suffering from this psychosomatic fog describe themselves as feeling dead inside or operating on autopilot. The somatic brakes we discussed earlier are clamped down so tight that the wheels of your vitality cannot turn. You are an engine revving in neutral. The noise is there. The energy is burning, but there is no forward motion. The body chooses this trade-off because it prioritizes survival over quality of life. Evolution does not care if you are happy. It only cares if you are safe. If your nervous system perceived that the intensity of your reality was dangerous, it deployed the fog to lower that intensity. It wrapped you in cotton wool to buffer the blows. But cotton wool is suffocating. It muffles your laughter just as effectively as it muffles your sobs. This creates a terrible paradox for the person trying to heal. You want the fog to lift because you want your mental clarity back. You want to be sharp, witty, and effective again. But your body resists lifting the fog because it knows what lies beneath it. It knows that if the fog clears, you will not just feel the joy you have been missing. You will feel the terror you have been hiding from.
The return of clarity means the return of sensitivity. You cannot have the sharp intellect without the sharp emotions. You cannot have the high resolution of the present moment without the high resolution of the past pain. This is why the fog can be so stubborn. It is not a malfunction. It is a shield that you are afraid to lower. You are living in a house where you cut the electrical mains to stop a fire alarm from ringing. Yes, the annoying screech of the alarm has finally stopped. You have achieved peace and quiet. But now you are sitting in a dark, cold house where nothing works. The refrigerator is warm, the lights are out, the heater is dead. You solved the problem of the noise, but you created the problem of uninhabitability. To reclaim your mind, you must be willing to turn the power back on.
You must be willing to hear the alarm ring so that you can find the fire and put it out, rather than just hiding in the dark. You have to accept that feeling the bad is the price of admission for feeling the good. The fog has kept you safe in a colorless purgatory, but safety is not the same thing as being alive. The goal now is to convince your body that it is safe enough to feel again. It is time to let the color bleed back into the world, even if that color is occasionally red with anger or blue with sorrow. It is better than the endless gray. Chapter 6. The Archaeology of the Self. We have arrived at the excavation site. You have spent years walking across a flat and featureless plain. This is the landscape of your brain fog. It appears gray and uniform and seemingly safe. But the reason this terrain is flat is not because there is nothing there. It is flat because everything jagged and sharp has been buried. The fog is not just weather. It is sediment. It is layer upon layer of dust that you have kicked over the things you cannot bear to look at. To understand why your mind has engaged this numbing mechanism, you must stop walking and start digging. You must become an archaeologist of your own psyche. This is a dangerous profession. In the physical world, an archaeologist fears collapsing tunnels or ancient traps. In the internal world, you fear the artifacts themselves. You are not digging for gold or pottery. You are digging for the truths that threaten to dismantle your current reality. This is why the fog exists. It is the soil that covers the ruins of what you really feel. Consider for a moment what might be waiting under the earth. Perhaps it is a realization about your career. You spent a decade building it. You invested your youth and your money and your identity into this path. But deep down in the bedrock of your mind, you know it was a mistake. You hate it. The realization is so costly that your brain refuses to let you have it. If you acknowledged the truth, you would have to dismantle your life. The somatic cost is too high. So the sentry at the gate floods your system with opioids and confusion. It says, "Sleep now, so you do not have to quit later." It makes you dumb, so you do not have to be brave. Dig deeper, and you might find something even more personal. There could be a resentment toward a spouse or a parent that you have deemed unacceptable. You are a good person. You are loyal. Good people do not feel this focused rage. So you bury the rage. You shove it down into the dark earth of the subconscious. But that emotion is radioactive. It does not die just because it is buried. It leaks a slow poison into the groundwater of your thoughts. The brain fog is the hazmat suit your mind wears to survive the toxicity. It dulls your senses so you do not taste the bitterness in the water. This is the archaeology of the self. It requires a different kind of courage. Most people think clarity is a chaotic lightning strike that happens to them. But clarity is actually a manual labor. It is the slow and deliberate removal of debris. You have to scrape away the distraction. You have to brush away the cheap dopamine. You have to lift the heavy stones of denial. Watch what happens when you first put your shovel into the ground.
Pay close attention to your body. You will feel the resistance immediately. You will decide to do this work, and suddenly you will feel an overwhelming urge to take a nap. You will feel a phantom hunger. You will remember an email you need to send right now. You will feel a sudden spike in the very fog you are trying to cure. This is not a coincidence. This is the defense mechanism reacting to the intrusion. You have struck a nerve. You have hit something hard under the soft dirt, and the sentry is panicking. It is trying to distract you. It is trying to pull you away from the excavation site before you see the face of the statue buried there. The mistake many people make is that they try to use dynamite. They try to blow up their entire psychological foundation in a single afternoon of intense introspection. This rarely works. The shock is too great, and the dust cloud just gets thicker. You must use a brush. You must uncover one corner of the truth at a time. You start by admitting the small things. You admit that you are bored. You admit that you are lonely, even when you are with people. You admit that you are angry about something that happened 20 years ago. You gently sweep away the dirt. You do not have to fix it yet. You just have to see it. The paradox of this archaeology is that the artifact is never as terrifying as the fear of finding it. The monster in the light is always smaller than the monster in the dark. When you finally pull that jagged truth out of the mud and hold it up to the sun, you will not feel destroyed. You will feel heavy, but you will also feel solid. The fog evaporates when there is nothing left to hide. The haze is only needed when there is a dissonance between who you are and who you are pretending to be. Once the pretending stops, the sentry can retire. The excavation is complete, and you are finally free to build on solid ground. Chapter 7. The Great Thaw. We have spent this entire journey exploring the cold architecture of your defense mechanisms. We have walked the perimeter of the cotton wool cage and acknowledged the sentry who guards the gate. We have respected the somatic breaks that brought you to a halt. But now comes the most delicate phase of all. The ice is beginning to crack. This is the moment where the numbness recedes and the sensation returns. This is the great thaw. It is important to understand why you stayed in the cold for so long. Numbness is a very specific kind of mercy. It shuts down the lines of communication between your body and your mind, so that you do not have to feel the extent of your injuries. Think of it like frostbite. When your hands are truly frozen, you feel nothing. You can bang them against a wall, and there is no pain, because the nerves have gone silent. But the moment you step into a warm room, the pain is excruciating. As the blood rushes back into those constricted vessels, it burns, it stings, it throbs with a violence that makes you want to run back out into the snow. This is exactly what happens when brain fog begins to lift. You are not just getting your focus back, you are getting your feelings back. And they do not come back one by one in a polite and orderly line. They rush in. This is the phenomenon of emotional reperfusion. The fog was suppressing the grief you never grieved,
and the anger you never voiced, and the joy you were too frightened to accept. As the mental haze clears, you are suddenly exposed to the raw texture of reality. You cannot force this thaw with a hammer. You cannot scream at your brain to focus. That is like shouting at a frozen lake. The only thing that melts ice is warmth. In psychological terms, warmth is safety. Your brain will only release the fog when it is absolutely convinced that the threat has passed. You have to prove to that primitive sentry at the gate that you can handle the influx of sensation. You do this by slowing down. You do this by breathing. You do this by allowing the first uncomfortable prickles of anxiety to exist without trying to numb them away again. As the thaw progresses, you will notice physical changes. You might feel a sudden exhaustion as the tension leaves your muscles. You might find yourself crying over a commercial or a song because the dam has broken. Do not be alarmed by this. This is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. It is the somatic discharge of energy that has been trapped in your nervous system for years. The brain fog was the lid on the pressure cooker, and you have finally turned down the heat enough to open it safely. We spoke earlier about how numbing the bad inevitably numbs the good. The reverse is now true. As you allow yourself to feel the discomfort of the thaw, you also unlock your capacity for vitality. The colors of the world start to look saturated again. Music sounds deeper. Food tastes richer. The mental clarity you were so desperate for does not arrive as a cold, intellectual sharpness. It arrives as a vibrant and pulsating connection to the world around you. You are no longer observing your life through a pane of dirty glass. You are standing inside it. The temptation to freeze up again will be strong. When the first wave of true clarity hits, it can be overstimulating. You see the mess you have to clean up. You see the time you have lost. The sentry will want to pull the lever and drop the fog back down to protect you from the regret. But you must hold your ground. You must stay with the sensation. Remind yourself that the pain of the thaw is temporary. It is simply the signal that the nerves are coming back online. The great thaw is not an event that happens in a single afternoon. It is a season. It is a gradual softening of the armor you built to survive. The fog served its purpose. It kept you suspended in animation until you were strong enough to face the truth. And if you are listening to this and you feel the prickle of heat returning to your limbs, then you know that you are ready. The winter is over. It is time to wake up. Chapter 8. Facing the Tiger. As the great thaw begins and the sensation returns to your limbs, you might expect a sudden wash of relief. You might expect the clouds to part and the sun to shine down on a peaceful inner landscape. But that is rarely what happens first. When the anesthesia wears off, the pain returns. When the fog lifts, you finally see the landscape clearly, and you realize you are not standing in a meadow. You are standing in a cage with a tiger. This is the moment of confrontation. This is the specific point in time your brain has been trying to avoid for years. The fog was not a malfunction. It was a barricade. It was a thick, heavy curtain drawn across a window because the view outside was too terrifying to process. Now that the curtain is pulled back, you are staring directly at the thing you have been hiding from. We call this facing the tiger. The tiger represents the truth that felt too dangerous to hold. It is the suppressed emotion that your nervous system deemed a threat to your survival. For some, the tiger is a realization about a relationship that has been dead for a decade. For others, it is a profound grief that was never mourned. It might be a rage so volcanic that you feared it would destroy everything you loved if you let it surface. It could simply be the terrifying admission that you are on the wrong path and have been for a long time. Your body, in its ancient and protective wisdom, decided long ago that facing this beast would destroy you. The brain fog was the compromise. It offered a dull, gray existence in exchange for safety. It shut down your processing power so you would not have to calculate the magnitude of your loss or the depth of your anger. It numbed the good to numb the bad. But now you have chosen clarity. You have deactivated the brakes. And the first thing that happens is a surge of intense, raw sensation. This is often the point where people retreat. The clarity feels sharp. It stings. The reality of your situation hits you without the buffer of dissociation. Your heart may race. Your stomach may turn. This is the somatic reality of truth. It is physical. You look the tiger in the eye. This is the apex of the journey. The creature is snarling. It looks lethal. Your instincts scream at you to run, to hide, to go back to sleep, to summon the fog back into existence. The terror is palpable. You feel small, and the truth feels enormous. However, there is a critical difference between the danger your body perceives and the reality of the moment. Your nervous system is reacting as if this truth is a biological predator that can tear flesh from bone. It equates the pain of grief or the shock of realization with actual death. But you are not a child anymore, and this is not the savannah. You stand your ground. You let the feeling wash over you. You let the grief compress your chest. You let the anger heat your skin. You let the regret weigh down your shoulders. You do not analyze it. You do not try to solve it. You simply endure the presence of the tiger. And then, something miraculous happens. You realize you are not dying. The tiger roars, but it does not bite. The emotions crash over you like a tidal wave, but you do not drown. You discover that the anticipation of the pain was far worse than the pain itself. The brain fog was protecting you from a phantom. It was shielding you from a shadow on the wall that looked like a monster. As you sustain your gaze, the tiger begins to shrink. The terrifying truth becomes just a fact. It is a heavy fact, perhaps a sad fact, but it is finite. It has edges. It is manageable. The overwhelming magnitude of the emotion begins to metabolize. Your body processes the chemicals of fear and sadness, and they pass through you. You realize that the fog was a prison you built to keep this creature out. But the creature was part of you all along. It was your own vitality, trapped and twisted into fear. By facing it, you reclaim that energy. The tiger does not eat you. It integrates with you. The energy that was used to hold the door shut is now available for you to live your life. You have survived the truth. The numbness is no longer necessary because you have proven to your own nervous system that you can handle the clarity. The sentry at the gate can finally stand down. The war is over. You are awake. You are safe. And for the first time in a long time, the silence in your head is not the silence of suppression, but the silence of peace. Chapter 9. The Integration of Shadow. We have arrived at the turning point. You have journeyed through the cotton wool cage. You have identified the sentry standing guard at the gate of your mind. You have felt the somatic brakes grinding against your own momentum, and you have finally turned to face the tiger. You have looked at the terrifying thing that your brain fog was trying to hide from you. Now we must ask, what happens next? Facing the tiger is not the end of the story. If you simply stare at your trauma or your repressed rage and then turn away, nothing changes. The sentry will raise his shield again, and the fog will roll back in to protect you. To dissolve the fog permanently, you must do something that feels counterintuitive and dangerous. You must open the door and invite the tiger inside. This is the integration of shadow. The term shadow is not mystical. It is a practical description of the parts of yourself that you have rejected. Think of your psyche as a house. When you were a child, the house was open and bright. You were allowed to be loud or needy or angry. But somewhere along the line, you learned that certain parts of you were unacceptable. Perhaps you were punished for your anger. Perhaps you were shamed for your tears. Perhaps you learned that being selfish was the worst crime imaginable. To survive in your environment, you took those unacceptable parts of yourself and you shoved them into the basement. You locked the door and you swallowed the key. You told yourself that you were no longer an angry person or a needy person. You created a curated version of yourself to present to the world, a version that was safe, a version that was lovable. But the parts you locked in the basement did not die. They are biological imperatives. Anger is a biological response to boundary violation. Sadness is a biological processing of loss. You cannot surgically remove them. You can only exile them. And here is the mechanism that generates your brain fog. Keeping a prisoner requires guards. Keeping the basement door shut against a pounding force requires constant physical pressure. Your nervous system is currently engaged in a civil war. Half of your energy is being used to push against the door, while the other half of your energy is trying to live your life. This is why you are tired. This is why you cannot focus. You do not have brain fog because you are broken. You have brain fog because you are exhausted from the effort of repressing your own humanity. You are running a high-demand background process that eats up all your bandwidth. Integration means ending the war. It means walking down to that basement and unlocking the door. It means looking at the rage you have been terrified of for 20 years and realizing it is not a monster. It is just a part of you that was trying to protect you. It is a biological response that needs to be felt, not feared. When you integrate the shadow, you stop pushing. You allow yourself to feel the anger without judgment. You allow yourself to acknowledge the grief without shame. You admit to yourself that you are capable of selfishness and cruelty and weakness, just like every other human being on the planet. This feels like a death. Your ego believes that if you acknowledge these dark things, you will be destroyed. The brain fog screams at you to stop. It tries to numb you one last time because it thinks the truth will shatter you. But the opposite happens. When you finally accept these exiled parts of yourself, the tension in your body releases. The somatic brakes disengage. The sentry lays down his weapon. The vast amount of energy that you were using to suppress your own emotions is suddenly returned to you. It rushes back into your system like water breaking through a dam. The brain fog dissipates because it no longer has a job to do. Its only purpose was to blind you to the reality of your internal state. Once you accept that reality, the fog becomes obsolete. You become whole again. You are no longer a house divided against itself. You are a unified entity with access to your full range of power and emotion. This is the great secret of the psychosomatic approach. We do not cure the fog by treating the fog. We cure the fog by making it unnecessary. we make it safe to see clearly again. When you are no longer afraid of who you are, you no longer need the cotton wool cage to hide in. The integration of shadow is the peace treaty that ends the war. And in the silence that follows that peace, you will find your clarity returning, not as a visitor, but as a permanent resident. Walking in the sunlight. The fog does not lift because you forced it away. It lifts because it is no longer necessary. For years, your mind acted as a benevolent jailer, keeping you in the gray to save you from the glare of a reality you felt too weak to bear. But now, you have walked through the archives of your past and looked the tiger in the eye. You have proven to your own nervous system that you can survive the truth without crumbling. This is what it means to walk in the sunlight. It is not a state of permanent bliss, but a state of raw, unbuffered contact with the world. You feel the sharp edges of grief and the intense heat of joy, without needing to numb either. The defense mechanism retires when the pilot finally takes the controls. You realize that the safety you sought in the haze was an illusion, and that real safety comes from your capacity to handle the now. You are no longer hiding from the intensity of your own life. You are simply living it, awake, alert, and entirely unafraid of what you might see.